HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Course in Mysticism and Miracles. Begin Your Spiritual Adventure by Jon Mundy Phd, read by Jon Mundy. Following is a quote from Albert Einstein. The most beautiful and profound emotion we can experience is the mystical. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. To know that what is impenetrable to us really exists is at the center of true religion. To my teacher, Ken Wapnick, Ph.D. Preface. The following is a quote from Evelyn Underhill in her book, Mysticism. Mysticism is the pursuit of a spiritual and intangible quest, the finding of a way out of illusion or a way back to absolute truth. It is an intimate, personal adventure. Mysticism is the art of arts. It is the most romantic of adventures. Why choose this book? Why listen any further? Maybe you already know something of the mystical. Maybe mysticism for you means remembering something you already know. When you read the teachings of the world's great wisdom literature and know of the wisdom of A Course in Miracles, a conversation naturally emerges regarding the similarities between the teachings of the Course and a host of teachings from different mystics and philosophers across the ages. Spend some time reading the Course and you'll soon say, "Who wrote this?" It is clear that nobody, B-O-D-Y, wrote it. It came through the mind and the hands of Helen Schucman, a professor of medical psychology at Columbia University. Having known Helen, however, as brilliant as she was, these sentences are not her ordinary way of speaking or being. In the 2016 movie Arrival, when aliens land on Earth, the first thing they must do is establish a means of communication. Not only are they confronted with a language barrier, as there would be, say, between someone who speaks Chinese and someone who speaks English, there's also a tremendous gap between the way the aliens think and the way those they find on Earth think. This boundary must be crossed before real communication can begin. 20th century philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein once pointed out that, although we cannot even begin to imagine how a lioness thinks, if her eyes are fixed on a gazelle, we have some idea of what she has in mind. So it is that mystical thinking also transcends words and our current ways of seeing, understanding, and being, yet we can still grasp its meaning. About A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles presents itself as a manual for a special curriculum intended for teachers of a special form of the universal course. There are many thousands of other forms, all with the same outcome. The Course is but one of many thousands of spiritual paths. Indeed, thousands upon thousands. There have always been those, like 13th century Persian mystic Jalaluddin Rumi, who have brought us different spiritual truths. In fact, many of the ideas contained in the Course are reflected in the teachings of a host of different thinkers and traditions that both predate and are contemporaneous with it. This is especially true for those who engage in what is called non-dualistic thinking. Gnostics, Neoplatonists, Advaita Vedantists, Zen Buddhists, Sufis, Kabbalists, Transcendentalists, those who expound new thought philosophies like Christian Science, unity, and religious science, and more recently, those who favor the work of Marie Perron in A Course of Love. Interfaith work and or what is also called interspirituality is clearly the wave of the future. In the end, no religion wins. God wins. which means everyone wins, as our will must ultimately be the same as that of God. Everything not of God is illusory, what the Course calls the dreaming of the world. The Course, like all mystical teachings, calls upon us to awaken from all dreaming. Since its release in 1976, A Course in Miracles has come to be regarded as a great work of art and a 21st century spiritual classic. More than 3 million copies now exist in 27 different languages. What is unique about the Course is its incredibly high level of psychological sophistication. It is truly a document of the 21st century, one that gives us ever deeper insight into the working of the mind. This book explains what mysticism is and identifies the basic characteristic of mystical experience: the loss of subject-object identity, a sense of timelessness, release of the ego self, and experiences of wonder, awe, reverence, freedom, happiness, and bliss. The Course is a manual for awakening of mystic vision without dogma, ritual, and the fetters of traditional religion. While there are many dedicated teachers of the Course, there is no hierarchy within the followers. No bishop, no central organization, no chain of command. This book contains quotes from and/or stories of more than 200 different individuals and sources. Acknowledgements. First, my thanks to my wife, my partner in life, my darling Dolores, who is ever present in her love and devotion to the life we gladly share. Loving her is my greatest happiness. I am a very lucky man. The day I met Dolores was the best day of my life. She brought me my daughter Sarah, and Sarah brought us her husband Andrew, and the two of them together have brought us our delightful grandson Bryson and our granddaughter Avery Rose. Fran Constantino, my assistant from 2005 to 2017, helped in every stage of development. I am grateful to her for her editorial skills, diligence, and patience. Since June 2017, my new assistant, Eileen Katzman, has added her editorial skills. I am grateful to A Course in Miracles students and teachers Lynn Matos, Greg Matos, David Brown, Lori Coburn, and Reverend Heather Harris for the many hours they spent looking over this book and making suggestions for improvements. My thanks to my young friend Zhao Wang, who contributed significantly to Chapter 10 of this book. Zhao is a remarkable young woman who went through a disrobing of the ego that has left her very wise for her age. Thanks as well to my friend Rod Schelberg for his critical assessment of this manuscript. In addition to being a medical doctor, Rod is a seasoned meditator and, like Zhao, committed to the truth. My friend Shanti Rika Josephs, since 1972, has been my steady rock, the one to whom I've been able to pour out my soul, the one who has consistently known the right answer. Finally, my thanks to Christine LeBon, my editor at Red Wheel Weiser, Jane Hageman, managing editor, and Lori Trufant, copy editor, for their consistent wise guidance in the development of this book. Introduction. Why Mysticism and Miracles? Following from A Course in Miracles. The part of your mind in which truth abides is in constant communication with God, whether you are aware of it or not. Two early 20th century mystics, G.I. Gurdjieff and Ramana Maharshi, both said that what is important in life is having a clearly defined living question. As A Course in Miracles expresses it, the test of everything on earth is simply this: what is it for? We can think of this question as the how and the why of life. We thirst for the truth because only truth will satisfy the soul's deep longing for God. How do we get into these bodies, in this world, at this time? What are we supposed to do here? Does life extend beyond the limits of our bodies, or do we just have a birth, a dream, and then death? There are people who say they know the answer to these questions. They have experienced insights, sometimes a momentary knowing, sometimes longer, deeper, more profound experiences that led to an inner conviction and a living awareness of eternal life. Some have experienced awakenings that have lasted for days and were so profound that they were not able to talk or eat. To go through such an awakening is to be transformed. When thus awakened, they often feel the need to share what they have seen, but find it very hard to put into words. Likewise, you may experience an insight with such profundity that you stop for a moment and peek into eternity through disciplined study and contemplation, through simply getting quiet, through falling in love, perhaps due to the death of a spouse, perhaps while fishing or driving, or perhaps for no clear reason at all. That is when your mind takes a picture of something you can never forget. A little background. For over 40 years, I simultaneously followed two professions. I was a parish minister, and I taught classes in philosophy, religion, and psychology at several colleges. During the summer of 1970, I trained in yoga with Swami Vishnu Devananda. In the summer of 1971, I left on a trip through India on which I spent time with Satya Sai Baba, Muktananda, and Osho. While meditating in an underground man-made cave at Muktananda's ashram in Ganeshpuri, I was guided to go back to New York and assured that I would find what I was looking for there. The whole experience left me wanting something more. By this time it was clear to me that God could only be found within, but I still needed to look for deeper clarity and understanding. My first book, Learning to Die, appeared in 1973. Helen Schuckman, the scribe of A Course in Miracles, and William Thetford, her supervisor at Columbia University School of Physicians and Surgeons, came to a lecture I was giving on mysticism and near-death experiences. At that time, I was only 1 month shy of my 30th birthday and knew that my own experience paled in the face of Helen and Bill's deeper understanding of the spiritual path. They were, however, quite kind. Helen welcomed my enthusiasm for mysticism and appreciated the fact that I was a theology student. One spring Sunday in 1975, Helen sat me down with Bill Thetford and another of her colleagues, Ken Wapnick, in Ken's tiny studio apartment in New York City. There she told me how the Course had come to be and how it affected the other people in the room. After this initial meeting, Ken and I decided we would continue to get together for further discussions at General Theological Seminary, where I was living, teaching, and doing postgraduate work. From that night on, Ken became my primary teacher and older brother in this earthly journey. When he died, Ken left us a mountain of information in printed books, audio recordings, and video productions. Exploring this treasure is marvelous fun, and I still listen to as many CDs as I drive. Ken left us more than words, however. He also left us an example, a demonstration of how to live in truth and find our way back home. For those who knew Ken, one word describes him above all others: kindness. Helen became a kind of informal therapist for me, helping me sort through my feelings and dealings with my too frequent romantic upheavals. A few weeks after our meeting, Helen met Judy Whitson, who later became president of the Foundation for Inner Peace, which published the first edition of the Course. Judy and I had been friends since the 1960s and were both working with the American Society for Psychical Research. Judy arranged for the Xeroxing of 300 copies of the course, called the Criswell edition, so a small group of us could start reading it and practicing the workbook lessons prior to its publication in 1976. Old news. What the Course says is not new. It simply provides an expansive view. Israeli-American violinist Itzhak Perlman once said, "An amateur practices until he gets it right. A professional practices until he can't get it wrong." The more a student practices a musical instrument, the more perfect and beautiful the sound. Likewise, the more the principles of the Course are understood and applied, the deeper we experience a sense of divine order. The Course is sophisticated and erudite, unpretentious and profound. It tells us over and over that the path is incredibly simple. We, however, are not simple. Understanding the Course requires that we purify our thoughts and deliberately remove all blocks to an awareness of love's presence. It requires that we put aside all judgment, attack thoughts, defensiveness, and deceptiveness. Most of all, it requires practice, 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 until you simply can't get it wrong. Mysticism and the Ego. I once asked Ken why he thought the Course came to us when it did, during the latter quarter of the 20th century. He said that he did not know for sure, but he was sure that it could not have appeared until after the work of Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. Freud understood the ego very well and described in some detail how it works. Before Freud, men like German idealistic philosopher Johann Fichte maintained that a study of the ego was fundamental to philosophy and to the then newly emerging field of psychology. But no one before Freud had spelled out the workings of the ego in such detail and with such amazing clarity. While there are similarities between the use of the word ego in the Course and in Freudian psychology, the usage is not the same. In the Course, the word is used in ways more akin to how it is used in non-dualistic, mystically oriented philosophy, in which the ego is a false self with no lasting reality. By contrast, Freud thought that we were damned to a life with the ego, absolutely stuck with it. There was no exit, no door to freedom. In The Future of Illusion, Freud writes, "The idea of God is an illusion based on an infantile emotional need for a powerful supernatural paterfamilias, that is, a strong father figure." Freud's atheism kept him from seeing that God was the answer to his dilemma. By contrast, the Course teaches that allegiance to the denial of God is the ego's religion. If Freud had studied Eastern philosophy or mysticism, as did Jung, he might have seen the way out. The presence of God is an absolute ingredient in awakening. Without God, we're lost. Mystics are lucky. Although perhaps not yet realized, they know that the search for God is the only way to go, and it is in that search that we experience miracles. This is much like the teaching of Meister Eckhart, a 12th century Dominican often regarded as the greatest of the medieval Christian mystics. The world, Eckhart tells us, is an emanation from an ultimate, indivisible being with whom the soul is ultimately united. Charged with heresy by the Inquisition, Eckhart spent the last 2 years of his life defending his mystical teachings and died before he could be executed. He is thus Meister, not saint. Eckhart epitomized the teaching of all mystics and his admonition, "Become in all things a God-seeker and a God-finder at all times and in all places." Albert Einstein, a mystic in his own way, put it more simply, I want to know the mind of God. Viewed from the perspective of medieval mysticism, the Course is the philosopher's stone, the magnum opus, or the great work that truly answers the riddles of the universe. It represents a process by which we can learn of the truth of our being, find freedom from our insanity, and be reassured of eternal life. Like all mystical systems, the Course is a path, a way, a process, a passage. It is a story that tells us of the grand destiny and points the way to the path out of hell. Ultimately, the answer to the riddle we call life is simply a matter of willingness to live in harmony with the divine. That is the miracle. We are simply called upon to remember, or better, recognize what we already know. The true mystic. At the core, everyone is a mystic. Everyone longs for God and our eternal home. Once, when I was teaching a class on mysticism, I described a thinker as a true mystic. A student asked what I meant, forcing me to contemplate the qualities I ascribed to mystics. I settled on 4 major characteristics that are common to them all. 1. A true mystic looks for God above and beyond all worldly endeavors. 2. A true mystic is willing to go through a deep inner cleansing of the soul, accept responsibility for decisions, and begin living in accordance with the will of God, which is our own will. 3. A true mystic dedicates his or her life to spiritual growth and to the process of being free of illusion in favor and recognition of reality. 4. A true mystic is a lover of the Absolute. Evelyn Underhill called true mystics the heroes of our race. Part 1. The Mystical Path. The following is a quote from Kalul Rinpoche. We live in the appearance of things. There is a reality, but we do not know it. To be everything, you must first be nothing. There must be no wanting, no needing. Chapter 1. Mysticism and Miracles. The following is from A Course in Miracles. Wholeness heals because it is of the mind. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. They are attempts to reinforce sleeping out of fear of waking. This is a pathetic way of trying not to see by rendering the faculties for seeing ineffectual. Rest in peace is a blessing for the living, not the dead, because rest comes from waking, not from sleeping. Sleep is withdrawing, waking is joining. No one becomes a mystic by reading a book. Reading a book doesn't hurt, however. A Course in Miracles is, in the first instant, a book. The right book can turn our minds and start the gears moving in a wholly new direction. Reading a mystic's writings helps us remember what we already know and provides a link to other mystics. Reading about mysticism is not the same as being a mystic, but is clear indication that our feet are on the path. With a little luck, we may be inspired to do the work required to develop a contemplative life. Mohammed said, "A scholar who writes about mysticism without mystical eyes is like a donkey carrying a load of books." Mysticism is available to all, including or sometimes especially children. You may not know how close mysticism is to you while driving your car, listening to music, taking a walk in nature, or sharing deeply with a loved one, but it is there. Almost nothing brings me greater joy than listening to mystics describe their experiences. Mystics naturally enjoy meeting and being with other mystics. They do so freely and in a relaxed manner, being appreciative of whatever gifts their companions bring. Mystics may have any career: teacher, salesman, computer operator, car mechanic, you name it. They can be found among poets, writers, musicians, nature lovers, artists, healers, ministers, philosophers, psychologists, and craftspeople of all sorts. Libraries are filled with mystical poetry and stories, mystical philosophies, and studies on mysticism. Many are called. The Course says, many are called, but few are chosen. Should be, all are called, but few choose to listen. Mysticism is an experience. It is something we live, not something we study or describe or investigate. These experiences can be found everywhere, in profound contemplation or in everyday life. Jeff Mills, a student of the Course, describes this simple mystical experience which came to him as he was leaving his barber shop after getting a haircut. I had not taken 10 steps when I saw an elderly woman pass by who reminded me of my mom. All of a sudden, I was overcome with an incredible sense of oneness. I felt a spreading, warm feeling in my chest. For a brief moment, it occurred to me to turn around and tell the barber about it, but what would I say? I leaned against the brick building while tears welled up in my eyes. I don't know whether coming across the woman triggered the event or whether it was coincidental, but I felt an incredible sense of connection, that all of us are connected to our source and to each other. I realized there's nothing to fear because there's absolutely nothing outside of us. I felt so safe and joyful. After a couple of minutes, I headed to my car with a deep peace flowing through me. Tell somebody who has never fallen in love what it's like to fall in love. You can try, but you can't really explain it, precisely because it's an experience. Magnify that experience tenfold, and you may begin to understand something of what a mystical experience is. You may get just a glimmer of it. The Taoists tell us the Tao which can be described is not the Tao. The Buddhists put it this way: the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. How can you freeze the infinite? Although mystical experiences may fade, however, they are never forgotten. Something consistently pulls us home. Mystical knowledge is not a secret. It is a revelation, a recognition of what already is. The word mystic derives from mysti, meaning to close the lips and eyes. Unlike the word esoteric, which means secret or hidden, the word mystical refers to knowledge that is not hidden, but simply not available to someone who is sleeping, unawakened, or unaware. Mysticism is thus both an experience and an ongoing, developing awareness. Mahavira, Buddha, Jesus, and Mohammed, as well as many other religious leaders, have always given the highest importance to the direct, personal experience of truth. Something wonderful happens during a mystical experience. A feeling of unity and connectedness, and a knowing transcends our ordinary sight. Something impels us to reach out in love for even greater love. Repeated experience with the mystical encourages our attention. Something pulls us to an even deeper seeing, knowing, and being. 15th century Italian polymath Leonardo da Vinci once wrote, "I awoke only to see that the rest of the world was sleeping." Mysticism is an awakening and the discovery of a state of mind that transcends what can be called the ordinary mind, or the sleeping mind, or the dreaming mind. Mystical experiences are transpersonal, that is, they transcend the personal and lead to an understanding of something much greater than the bodily me that walks the earth and has an identity as an individual. While others may question the veracity of a mystical experience, mystics do not. Profound mystical experiences, what the Course calls holy instances, are transformative and life-changing. Once the door opens, you cannot shut it completely.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?